Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the 2014 debates sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Larchmont and Mamaroneck. My name is Alice Pernick, and I am co-president of our local league. Our mission is to encourage the informed and active participation of people in our government at all levels. The League of Women Voters is nonpartisan and neither supports nor opposes any of the candidates you'll see tonight. Tonight, there will be debates for 2 contested races, followed by question and answer periods for 3 candidates who are running unopposed. There's an additional local candidate who will be on your ballot, but who will not be appearing tonight due to time constraints, and that is Christy Derrico, who is running unopposed for Village of Mamaroneck Justice. All of the candidates have received a copy of the agenda rules and format. The order in which they will speak has been determined by lot, and the first 2 or 3 questions in each debate will be from the League of Women Voters. And then after that, candidates will answer questions submitted by audience members. If you wish to submit a question, please write your name and question on our form and give it to a league member. Beth is circulating over there. Beth, you want to give everybody a wave? Okay, she's got forms, and you can give them back to her, or you can give them to me. Unfortunately, because of time constraints, we cannot read every question submitted by audience members. If we receive multiple questions about the same or similar topics, they will be grouped together, and the League of Women Voters will select one question from that group that most clearly presents the issue. Therefore, we ask for your understanding if you don't hear your exact wording, or if the subjects receive more than one question, or if you don't hear your name when the question on that topic is read. If we have selected your question to read, you must be present at the time it is read. Election day this year will be on Tuesday, November 4th. Polls are open from 6 a.m. until 9 p.m. For information about voting, you can visit www.vote411.org for the location of polling places and a list of all the races that will appear on your ballot and other election information. All you have to do is enter your zip code. I urge all of you to get out and vote on November 4th. We're so fortunate here to live somewhere where we have the right to vote in free and fair elections, and I think the recent protests we've been reading about in Hong Kong are really a reminder that we should never take that right for granted. With that right, though, comes the responsibility to vote for well-informed candidates who will lead us responsibly. Your vote reflects your voice, and these debates are provided by the League of Women Voters to the community as a vital public service because we want you to vote with confidence on the issues. Before we begin the debates, I would like to invite everyone to join the League for, well, maybe not the students because they should be in school, but everybody else. We're having a breakfast at the Nautilus Diner this Friday, December 10th at 8:15. Our speaker will be Connie Schneider, who will reflect on working in conflict areas around the world. This is in conjunction with the One Book, One Mamaroneck reading of I Am Malala, which is being sponsored by our local libraries. We're a small local league that accomplishes a lot. In addition to candidates forums and issues breakfasts, in the past year, the Larchmont Mamaroneck League has sponsored 2 local students to participate in the state league's Inside Albany program, organized a voter registration drive, organized the local portion of the Vote 411 Voters Guide, also a Meet Your Elected Officials Night, a community yard sale for the benefit of the town of Mamaroneck's energy-efficient renovation of the ice rink, and lots more. But in order for us to continue providing these services, we need an active membership. We need your help for jobs both large and small. Even if you have just a few hours of time, there's a place for you in our league. I welcome anyone listening here or at home to become an active member of the League of Women Voters so we can continue the League's legacy in our community. You can find us online at lwvlm.org, and you can speak with us tonight or Friday's breakfast. Please join us. I believe we also have some membership envelopes on the table outside on your way out. Many people have helped make these debates possible. I would like to thank the League members who helped organize tonight's forum. I also want to thank LMC-TV for their broadcast. Our thanks go to the town of Mamaroneck for the use of the town center, and a special thanks goes to the candidates who are appearing here as part of their busy campaign schedules. I particularly want to thank our local League of Women Voters board member, Marjorie Shapiro, who will be serving as our timekeeper tonight. Marjorie, you want to give us a little wave? Okay, thank you. And finally, I want to extend both our welcome and our thanks to tonight's moderator, who is Ms. Lindsay Feinberg. Ms. Feinberg is a resident of Hastings-on-Hudson. She's been a moderator for the League of Women Voters for more than a decade. In the past, she served as president of the Rivertowns League of Women Voters. She works for the Supreme Court of New York County as a court attorney. We're pleased to have her here with us tonight, and I now turn the debates over to Ms. Feinberg.
Thank you. I'm going to explain the format and the rules, and then we will begin the first portion of the debate. The format is as follows. Each candidate for office may make a 1-minute opening statement. I, the moderator, read all questions. The League will provide the first 2 or 3 questions. I will read the written questions for the candidates that are provided by members of the audience and ask the questioner to confirm his or her presence by standing up. Questions will not be more than 30 seconds in length. Candidates have 1.5 minutes to respond to each question. We will try to fit in as many questions as possible. The rules for questions are as follows. Questions will address issues, not personalities. The order of speaking has been determined by lot. Questions must be legibly written and indicate to whom the question is addressed if it is addressed to a particular candidate. On the questionnaire form, to be submitted to the League representative, the questioner will provide his or her name and address and indicate whether the question is addressed to a particular candidate. The question may not exceed 30 seconds in length. I will read the question and ask the questioner to confirm his presence. The questions may be directed to a specific candidate or to all candidates, but all candidates have an opportunity to respond to each question. Candidates have 1.5 minutes to answer each question. The League will avoid redundant questions and combine audience questions that are the same or similar. There is no rebuttal. Candidates may include rebuttal commentary in their closing statements. And please hold your applause until all candidates have made their closing statements at the end of each debate segment. Once again, please vote on Tuesday, November 4. Okay, now we will begin the debate between the candidates for the New York State Senate. The order of speaking was determined by lots. Joseph Dillon will speak first, followed by George Latimer. Okay, and with that, we will begin. We have a timekeeper here who will give you notice when 30 seconds are up, and then when it's time to stop. And I ask that you may finish your sentence, but don't begin another sentence once the stop sign goes up. So, Mr. Dillon.
Thank you. Just want to thank the League of Women Voters for having us here tonight, and thank my opponent, Senator Latimer, for joining us. I'd like to just take one quick second. On a personal note, I want to say a happy anniversary to my wife, Rachel. We've been married 20 years today. I never thought we would be spending our 20th anniversary with Senator Latimer, but we're happy to be here.
Nor did I.
I'm asked why I'm doing this, why I'm running. I'm a first-time candidate. I've had plenty of experience in public policy and campaigns, but this is my first campaign. And the reason why I'm doing it is I'm compelled. In my opinion, New York is broken. We are on a perilous trajectory as a state. And I'm very concerned about the kind of state our kids stand to inherit. We are facing a trifecta of 50s. We are 50th in the nation in job creation and business friendliness. We are 50th in the nation as far as taxes are concerned. Excuse me?
Your time's up.
Wow.
Yeah, 1 minute goes very quickly.
Yeah, I guess I'll learn that as we go. Okay.
All right.
To be continued.
All right. Mr. Latimer, you have 1 minute.
Thank you to the League and to the people of Larchmont and Mamaroneck for this forum. I'm seeking my second 2-year term in the New York State Senate. In this election, you have a choice between two people. Now, some people will argue it's about two parties, some people say it's about two ideologies, but it's really a choice between two people: who we are, what we've done, what we expect to do. One of those two people, the people of Larchmont and Mamaroneck, have come to know. You've come to know me through the Nautilus Diner, where we've had open discussions about issues, and through PTA meetings and at the Larchmont Mamaroneck Summit. We walked alongside each other when they put swastikas on a private house in Orienta. We were side by side during 9/11 and cried for the people that we lost. And on the substantive side, I've delivered the first public money after the 2007 flood, money for the Larchmont Public Library's children's room, for the Mamaroneck High School turf field, and been honored by the Chamber of Commerce's in Mamaroneck and Larchmont for my work there. All of those things speak to the kind of legislator that I've been and the kind of legislator that I intend to be for the next 2 years.
Thank you, Mr. Latimer. All right, we'll now pose the first question, which is from the League of Women Voters. And the order will continue to rotate, so Mr. Dillon will answer this question first. Governor Cuomo has come out in favor of closing Indian Point nuclear power plant. Do you believe the state should try to shut down Indian Point or support its continued operation? If you favor a shutdown, how would New Yorkers replace the energy it provides without steep price hikes? If you favor continued operation, how can we be assured of the safety of this aging facility in our densely populated area in the event of a terrorist act or a Fukushima-type natural disaster?
Yes.
You have 1.5 minutes.
Yeah, good to know. I actually believe that Indian Point is an important source of energy for the region. It provides 25% of this region's energy, and it's emission-free. What we need to do is not close Indian Point down, but we need to work with state authorities, federal authorities, law enforcement, and put the money in required to have efficient safety measures in place and the proper infrastructure to make sure that Indian Point is safe from natural disasters as well as terrorist attacks. But I think the real issue in this campaign, again, are taxes, creating jobs, and returning New York to its status as the empire state, the leading innovator, job creator in the world. And we are anything but on that path right now.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon. Mr. Latimer, 1.5 minutes.
The practical reality is that the megawatts that we get from Indian Point has no replacement reality today. There's no way to continue to run the electricity that we need. Many people have legitimate concerns about nuclear power, what we do with the spent fuel rods, what's going to happen over the long haul. It does sit on a fault line. There's a proposal for a gas pipeline that may go by that area, which could become a problem. But the harsh reality is that we don't have sited any new power plants of any sort, whether natural gas driven. We have not yet made the commitment to solar energy that we need to make. We have not yet put in place a robust energy conservation plan. So we're going to have to put all those things together in an energy plan before we have any kind of a conversation about what might the future of nuclear power be at Indian Point. And it is the Federal Nuclear Regulatory Commission that holds the final key on these issues. So positions that a state legislator may take, or a county legislator, or a village trustee are interesting, but it really becomes our federal officials having to determine where we go in the future. But we do know that we need to generate energy, and we need to do it in a way that people will accept, because very few people want to have the high-tension power lines in their backyard, and very few people want to have any kind of energy plant near their home. And unfortunately, these places have to be sited somewhere. So I think the reality of it is Indian Point will be staying in place for a while, and we're going to have to do the things necessary to protect it and secure it.
Thank you, Mr. Latimer. Okay, the next question also is posed by the League. Mr. Latimer will go first this time. The question is, what is your position on both the Common Core and the way it has been implemented?
I've been a critic of the Common Core, and although my opponent has attacked me by pointing to some legislation that really doesn't apply to Common Core, I've been the most outspoken member of my political party. I've broken with the Democratic Party in Albany by not voting to reappoint regents, by speaking up. And if you don't believe me, Google when you go home tonight, George Latimer, John King, and you'll see online the dialogue that I had had with John King. You can also find a discussion I had with the Journal News editorial board to highlight it. The problem is that the higher standards of Common Core are not the problem. The problem is implementing a major change in the way you deliver education from the top down. It cannot be effectively done that way. It must be done from the bottom up. It must involve students, teachers, parents, and that is not how this program has initiated itself. So the concern that I've had, I've said this before, we need to stop what we're doing. We need to evaluate everything we're doing, and we need to have a dialogue with every single stakeholder in this process before we go forward. I've heard people say stop Common Core, but if you're going to stop Common Core, you're going to need to do it on a bipartisan basis. Taking this issue and trying to wrap one political party around it will never be effective. And as an outspoken Democrat on this issue, I find it offensive to read things such as Latimer voted for the Common Core, which is flat out not true.
Thank you, Mr. Latimer. Mr. Dillon.
Oh, I disagree. It is true, actually. You voted for the enabling legislation with the race from the top money that was being dangled by the federal government, making New York the first state in the country for this experiment. I don't think our children are lab rats. It was ill-conceived from the very beginning. It is a federal attempt to nationalize curriculum and take away local decision-making. It was poorly vetted by professionals and parents. Actually, you also voted, Senator Latimer, for to put the infrastructure together and the data system that has all kinds of security issues and privacy issues that have been raised. We actually exchanged it a little bit on Facebook today. We had misquoted you for voting against, was it A11310, which actually you should have voted for because that was in support of charter schools, which is something I would have done as a matter of putting students over politics. But you did vote for 309 and you did vote for 311. Again, one implemented the database, the other one provided the technical requirements to put the infrastructure for Common Core together. So your DNA is all over it. I think it's a mistake. I think it's a disaster. We have to repeal Common Core. What we have to do is go back to the state-based standards that were in place by former regents who we had spent millions of dollars with New Yorkers putting very high quality New York-based standards together. I'm a firm believer in standards, but I do not believe that the curriculum should be dictated by Washington. A big government approach is never the answer.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon. All right, the next question is addressed to Mr. Dillon, whose turn it is to go first. And this question is posed by Fran Snedeker. There you are. Okay, could you stand up, please? All right. Thank you, Ms. Snedeker. Okay, the question is, Mr. Dillon, I understand that you consider yourself anti-abortion and have received the support of the pro-life community. Is it your position that all abortions should be illegal and that the government should not support birth control measures as they are considered anti-life?
Anyone who would suggest that the debate today in New York State is about choice, about a woman's right to choose, is misleading you. That is not what the debate is about today. I am privately, in my personal life, I am pro-life. That my family is pro-life. But we are not talking about dialing back reproductive rights whatsoever. That is not on the table. The issue that we need to focus on is on the other side, and that's my opponent's position, which I find extreme, way outside of the mainstream and actually a threat to women's health, and that is trying to pass legislation that would allow abortion up to the point of delivery, and it would allow it to be conducted by people who are not certified medical professionals. I find that reckless. I find it outside of the mainstream. I find it reprehensible. It's nothing I would ever support.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon. Mr. Latimer, you may address the issue or the question.
Well, first off, that's the issue. I think that abortion and choice is a matter that's very personal, and it matters what your personal, philosophical, and theological beliefs are. My church teaches me that it's wrong, and I believe that in terms of my personal practice, but I think Joe is dead wrong trying to legislate it for the whole of society. We have to allow for people, based on their philosophy and based on their theology, to come to a judgment on an issue this difficult. Now, he mentioned and misrepresented what the women's agenda point is, and I'd encourage you, don't read a mailing, don't listen to even candidates speak. Pull the bill out for yourself. Here's what it has to say about that particular point. It says, New York protects a woman's right to terminate a pregnancy within 24 weeks from commencement of her pregnancy. That's a limited period of time, or when necessary, that's late, to protect a woman's life or health as determined by a licensed physician. That's not an expansion. That's a codification of Roe v. Wade. Joe didn't answer the original question. The original question was, do you believe that abortion should be legal? And he ducked it by saying what the current issue is. The belief is whether or not you believe that this is a right as granted through Roe v. Wade and through the state of New York and through the state of the United States of America. Now, let me, since there's no other time, go back to his misrepresentations on Common Core, since this is the only way I can do this. He referenced 3 bills that he said I voted for the Common Core. I encourage you to read these bills. They date from May of 2010, before there was discussion of Common Core. I'll give you the references. You can read it for yourself online. You'll see that there's no reference to Common Core in here. It's a fabrication.
Mr. Latimer, your time is up. Thank you.
That's why I stopped.
Good. Thank you. All right. The next question will start with Mr. Latimer, and the question must be from the League because we don't have the questioner identified. The question is, what is your position on the correct way to address the issue of redistricting?
Well, I think that the amendment that's on the ballot this year should be voted down. I don't believe it provides true independent redistricting. On a closer analysis, and I've had a chance to read some critique on it, all this does is basically roll the ultimate decision back to the legislative bodies, which have proven before that a majority will defend their majority's prerogatives. You need an independent commission along the lines of what Iowa has done or Maine has done or Arizona. We're in the middle of the 10-year cycle before redistricting. We have time to get it right. This amendment gets it wrong. I understand the League has a different position on it. I've never been afraid to disagree with anybody, from Governor Spitzer on down to colleagues. So the bottom line is, I think this is a bad decision. It should be voted no. We should start from scratch and have a truly independent redistricting commission.
Thank you, Mr. Latimer. Mr. Dillon, would you like me to read the question again?
No, actually, I agree with Senator Latimer, and I don't think I could put it as succinctly. That's exactly, we stand on the same side on that one. But it is an issue of good government, and it is important, and I don't mean to diminish it. The process needs to be independent. But, good government also involves getting your financial house in order. And I think Albany is a fiscal disaster, and that is something that I think we need to spend a lot of time talking about, because Senator Latimer has been there for many, many years, both in the Assembly and in the Senate. Spending is out of control. We are the most highly taxed state, and this county in the nation. He has voted for every major tax that has come down the pike since 2009, the MTA tax. He voted against the property cap tax. He said that he voted against that because we weren't doing meaningful mandate reform, but unfortunately he didn't show up for the Tier 6 pension reform vote, and of course that was probably the most important chance to address mandates in a generation. So we've got a lot of work to do. I think we have very different points of view. I am somebody who is pro-growth. I believe that gap accounting should be applied to the accounting process and the budget process in Albany. There should be much more transparency. It is an issue of good government. Taxpayers here in Westchester County need relief. Our young people need jobs. New York State is on the wrong path, and I think that the job of a legislator or any of our officials in Albany is to do the right thing.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon. The next question is also from the League of Women Voters, and Mr. Dillon will answer first. The question is, what is your position on hydrofracking and on the proposed expansion of the existing Algonquin pipeline? What have you done and what will you do?
Well, I want to start out, my message is jobs and opportunity, and I feel very strongly about that. Good paying jobs is something that are desperately needed across the state, but nothing is worth environmental degradation. So I call on Governor Cuomo to finish the studies that are holding up the final determination on whether or not New York State feels that fracking can be conducted safely in the state. Now, the Obama administration, the EPA has determined determined that it can be, but we are withholding, I think, until after the election to make a determination. Again, if it can be done safely in those communities that would like to do it in upstate New York, I would be all for good-paying jobs coming in to areas where people are really hurting because there's great dignity in a job. So I really would like to try to get this process finished. As far as the pipeline is concerned, it's been around for many, many years. I would support doing whatever we can to build its infrastructure and have it be a vital resource for the region, because I think the energy policy in New York State should be all of the above. As long as the environment is respected and preserved, we should pursue all types of energy sources, renewable energy, nuclear energy at Indian Point with the right protections and the right infrastructure, and any other type of energy, so that we bring the cost down for New Yorkers.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon. Mr. Latimer.
I think probably the most notable thing just happened in this debate. I heard somewhere in Joe's answer praise for the Obama administration, so that doesn't happen very often. The reality of hydrofracking is that we don't know what the long-term impacts are in terms of health. And while I wait to see what kind of health study comes out of the governor's initiative, I voted for, in both houses, the ability to have an independent health study to determine what are the long-term effects of hydrofracking. We don't know that we aren't going to despoil the drinking water of these areas. We don't know if we're going to destroy the well waters of these areas. We don't know if the fumes that come from the combination of trucks that come up and down the road to both deliver fresh water and take out effluent is going to be injurious to people's health. I traveled to Pennsylvania with a group of legislators and saw it for myself. And while there's a lot of business in the local diner and a lot of business at the local motel, a lot of trucks with license plates from Texas and Oklahoma, so I assume there are good jobs from people from Texas and Oklahoma coming up, maybe people from New York, but what we don't see are the long-term costs of what would happen if we have an environmental disaster and that disaster turns into the loss of a water supply. So I think we're wise to do what other states haven't done, and that's measure twice and cut once. On the pipeline, I think it's the same issue. I think there's a safety issue. I understand that we're expanding a pipe from 26 inches to 42 inches. It's running near Indian Point. The rush to do this for the sake of jobs is a rush that we may regret in the long run. And again, I'll repeat the same advice my father gave me. Measure twice, cut once. And make sure you don't make a mistake.
Thank you, Mr. Latimer. All right, the next question is from Celia Felsher. Ms. Felsher, will you stand up? Thank you. Mr. Latimer will answer first, and the question is, what do the candidates think the most important issues relating to education are, generally, and to Mamaroneck in particular? Mr. Latimer.
Well, I think we've touched on one of them in terms of Common Core, and there's much more to be talked about, and I respect the League's format is very quick and precise. I think this bears a much longer conversation so that you can understand the full thinking of it, and it gives me a chance to refute some of the arguments that Joe's made. School funding formula in the state is broken, and it has to be fixed. We're going to have a debate, no doubt, shortly about school aid. There was a big crisis in 2010 which cut school aid across the board, and increments have been refunded since then, but we haven't gotten, Celia, to the point that that's an effective number. But we also deal with an economy that hasn't fully rebounded from 2009, and that's a difficult thing as well. In general, I have always preferred to have local control and local responsibility for things, and I think if we're going to provide the right type of balance in education, we need to relieve state mandates on education and allow local school boards and local voters to make the decisions that will give them the best chance of the future. And I have a real problem with one-size-fits-all education. I think there are different problems in Portchester to Eastchester and Yonkers to Bedford, and I think you have different strategies for each, and I'm concerned that the State Education Department is looking to standardize things in a way that I don't think is going to be helpful. Each of the folks here are young people going through this educational system once. When they pass through this system and they go on to the future, it's their future that we either well or poorly educated, and I'm very concerned that we have in some districts the opportunity for them to move on effectively and some we aren't, and I don't think the state's doing enough to balance those things.
Thank you, Mr. Latimer. Mr. Dillon.
The way I look at this, the biggest issue is funding. As Senator Latimer said, the school aid formula shortchanges Westchester and has for many, many years. Per pupil spending here in Westchester is just about half of what the state average is per pupil. That's unacceptable. Our public schools, particularly where I am in Yonkers, are hurting, and they need the money that they're entitled to. That money's gone to other districts where there are powerful legislators representing their interest in Albany. Adding insult to injury, though, is this gap elimination adjustment. And this was a gimmick that was a one-time hit that was put together by the state legislature in 2009, 2010 to deal with the budget deficit. And the concept was to withhold 5% from each school district across the country, and that's to the tune of, you're talking about billions of dollars, and use that money to stuff up holes in the budget elsewhere. It works so well, they've been doing it every year. Mr. Latimer's voted for every budget that has included the gap elimination adjustment. And here in Mamaroneck, you are out about $5 million over that 5-year period, where I'm in Yonkers, we're out over about $100 million. But they have withheld up to $8 billion over the several-year period from our public schools. This is money being taken away from our classrooms and our teachers, our kids. Our most important asset are our children. What our teachers do God's work. They need the money and the funding and the support to do the job they need to do in the classroom.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon. All right, the next question is from the League of Women Voters, and Mr. Dillon, you'll go first. The question is, what would you advocate that the state do to help our localities deal with their crumbling infrastructure?
Again, it goes back to taxing and spending. I think that the mandates are crushing locally. It's crushing on our property tax payers, but also at the county. I think we need to start thinking about doing things like having the state, in a phased-in fashion, take over the cost of Medicaid, which is bankrupting our counties, and they are unable to invest in the kinds of infrastructure that we need. But this also goes to the whole issue of the Tappan Zee Bridge plan, which is not funded. There's no federal money set aside. The state has no plan on any state money, and they're looking at raising the fare to about $15 to $20. I look at the state rebate checks that were cut this year because supposedly we had a $2 billion surplus. That money actually could have gone back to our public schools because $1.4 billion was taken from schools in the gap elimination adjustment. But let's just put that aside for a second. If you're looking for money to fund a $3 billion to $5 billion bridge, well, you could find it in the rebate checks that were cut a month before Election Day. So I think there are a lot of gimmicks and chicanery going on in Albany, and what Albany has to do is start taking meaningful steps to reduce these mandates that are crushing local communities and hampering them. Actually, they're crippling them from addressing some of the really important infrastructure issues that we have to face as a community, because guess what? We're competing for jobs. And I'm telling you, the infrastructure in different parts of the country is so far superior to ours. That is a catalyst to economic growth, and we're losing out on that.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon. Mr. Latimer.
I'm a sponsor of legislation that would freeze at the local level the pension costs by municipal governments at 2%. If you're going to have a tax cap at 2%, then you ought to freeze how much those municipal governments pay at 2%. That would allow money for Lorraine Walsh and the Larchmont Village Board to look at their capital infrastructure. I support the phase out of the Medicaid mandate. That's $220 million out of Westchester County's allocation. That would allow the county government to be able to allocate more money for improvements on Murray Avenue, a county road, or Palmer Avenue, a county road. But I'll tell you some of the gimmicks. One of the gimmicks is a $50 million waste of money that the Senate Republicans have been behind. We, for the last 2 years, have argued that we should have one primary day in June. The federal court has mandated a June primary day for the federal elections, U.S. Congress, U.S. Senate, but the Republicans in the Senate have fought against that and want to have a second state primary day. That's a cost of $50 million. You want money to reimburse Mamaroneck School District? There, it's sitting right there. I voted for it, but the Republicans did not vote for it. Now, I'm not looking to be partisan here, but I'm looking to make the point that the problems in Albany have been created by Republicans as well as Democrats. It's a phony argument to try to point to one political party. That's the kind of gamesmanship that's going on for years. That's why I've had a bipartisan record in Westchester County government. I've had a bipartisan record as a member of the Assembly and the Senate, and that's why I object so greatly to these attack mailings. Tony Sage and those who are professional about this, they know how to put these pieces out there. But the bottom line is this doesn't help you make a choice between two individuals and what they're actually going to do once you get beyond the rhetoric.
Thank you, Mr. Latimer. The next question also is from the League of Women Voters. Mr. Latimer will go first, and the question is, what steps should New York State take to address challenges facing taxpayers?
Well, I think we've touched on some of them already. I think the nature of reducing unfunded mandates, we've identified the Medicaid mandate. That represents about 40% of the total spending correlated to taxes in Westchester County. We've talked about what we've done in terms of, what I've done in terms of sponsoring a pension cap. I'd like to talk about the MTA payroll tax because my opponent brought it up as a tax that I voted for. He didn't tell you that we voted to cut the tax afterwards, after the crisis was over. He didn't tell you that I was the sponsor of the repeal bill 2 years after the crisis was over. We had a crisis in 2009 that required funding. And if we had let fares double and rates, and service drop in half, people who do residential real estate, people who live in these communities would have been devastated. 28% of the people who live in zip code 10538 get on that train every day. 35% of the people who live in zip code 10580 get on that train every day. In 2009, the MTA payroll tax was a necessary stopgap. By 2011, it could be plausibly repealed and scaled back, and that's what we did. But when someone tells you part of the story, but not all of the story, that's an effort to misrepresent. And that's what you, the voter, have to fight through to make sure you don't hear the rhetoric, but you read the actual bills. You get the background on a story so you can make an honest judgment, not a political judgment.
Thank you, Mr. Latimer. Mr. Dillon?
Yeah, before I go into what kind of proposals I would make from a tax relief perspective, let's get the MTA story straight. What you sponsored to repeal was to take the MTA tax from $1.5 billion down to $1.2 billion, so it's still really there, and it's a big problem, and it's a huge burden for taxpayers, which is the quintessential example of passing mismanagement to the taxpayer endlessly. The MTA is horribly mismanaged, and what Albany does is, first of all, they raid the revenues, and then they raid the funding for the MTA. And MTA is horribly mismanaged, and a third of its, according to state auditors, a third of its deficit is related to mismanagement. So what Albany has to stop doing is passing mismanagement onto the taxpayer and actually getting its act together in Albany. And you know, the MTA tax did not have to happen. That MTA tax would have been paid for just simply by the revenues, you know, kind of keeping the MTA's house in order. So just want to make that clear. We're not misleading anyone on anything. But what we could do, I think, very quickly is I think we need to make the tax cap permanent. I think we need to focus on meaningful mandate.
We're going to take a short break to change candidates and then move into the debate.
Sorry, Ms. Feinberg. We actually, can I just have your attention for a moment?
What?
We're going to have a very slight change in the order, and I do apologize. Our Congressman Elliot Engel is here and has to get to another appointment, so his time is going to be very brief. So I apologize to the village trustee candidates. It will be just a couple more minutes. So we're going to change seats and switch around, and then we'll have Congressman Engel on in just a moment. Thank you.
Do you have a name card? Of the program. Please come to order. Take your seats, or if you're not staying, then you may exit now. But we have very limited time. We have to be out of here at 10 o'clock. And I'm going to ask Congressman Engel to please come to the dais. Thank you, Ms. Miller. All right, David Finch.
Thank you. I've had a home in the village for 40 years now. Both of my kids reside in the village. My daughter Jen and her husband Michael Valentine both graduated from Rhinebeck High School. Their daughter Molly just began kindergarten here. I've been involved in the community for a long time in many ways, so I was thrilled and honored to have been nominated to run this year alongside trustees Alyssa Miller and Leon Potok. This is an important opportunity for me to make a difference. This is to put the village governance back on track with decorum, civility, and respect. We must have the new, thoughtful, and truly independent team of Finch, Miller, and Potok on the Village of Mamaroneck Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Mr. Finch. All right, Maggie Lee O'Neill.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Maggie Lee O'Neill. First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, my co-candidates, and the opponents. It's not easy to be up here, is it? I am a fourth-generation resident in the Village of Mamaroneck. I am a proud Rhinebeck High School Panther. I graduated from Ithaca College. I am a first-generation college grad, and I currently am on the Board of Architectural Review. In local government, partisanship prevents progress. When I'm elected as village trustee, it is my only aim to ensure that we work together cohesively and responsibly. Regardless,
The issue
done, and not just for the building inspector, but for all of our top employees there that are leading departments. An assessment should be done to know what they really need.
Right, okay, thank you. Downstream shoreline community. What further steps do you propose to take to address